Hey everyone, this is a basic guide to the new Mist of Tirna Scithe dungeon in Shadowlands. This beautiful looking dungeon is located in Ardenweald, where you'll be fighting 3 bosses, Ingra Maloch, Mistcaller and Tred'ova. So in this guide we'll be looking at a couple of different things. The boss fights, the Nightfade dungeon bonuses, notable trash mobs, and then we'll summarize everything up at the end. So let's start off with the first boss, Ingra Maloch. So, throughout the boss fight you'll be switching between Ingra Maloch and the big triad. When that becomes friendly, switch to Ingra Maloch who will be stunned and take 200% more damage for 12 seconds. So this might be a good time to pop all of your cooldowns. Also make sure that your tank does not face the group with the big triad, because it does Enchanted Pollen, which is a frontal cone that inflicts damage and disorients players for 4 seconds. Ingra Maloch will also cast an ability called Embrace Darkness, reducing damage taken by 80% and leaving a ticking debuff on all players. Now the big triad will also be casting anima puddles on the ground. You just have to avoid those and interrupt Maloch to get him away from the puddles. On Mythic difficulty, the boss will gain an additional ability called Repulsive, which will fear everyone for 3 seconds. So it's important that you position yourself correctly. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the first boss. So before you get to the next boss, which is Mistcaller, you have to fight your way through a maze filled with puzzles. The way the maze works is that there will always be 4 symbols and you have to find and choose the one that doesn't match with the rest. The symbols you can choose from is a purple flower or a green leaf with or without the circle. The symbols can also be filled or not filled. So for example, if you have 2 green leaves with a circle and a flower with a circle, you have to pick the flower without the circle. However, if you get it wrong, you will get teleported back to the beginning of the maze until you find the correct pathway. Okay, so the first 2 abilities are actually pretty simple. The first one is called Dodgeball and it's pretty easy to avoid. The next one is called Patty Cake and can only be interrupted by the tank, so make sure your tank knows that. The boss will also be casting Freeze Tag on a random target, which summons a blue fox that fixates on that player. If the fox reaches the target or somebody intercepts it before it expires, it will explode and deal a huge amount of frost damage and stun everyone within 8 yards for 8 seconds. The last ability the boss will be casting is the Guessing Game, and it's pretty much the same as the maze puzzle that I just explained. The boss will spawn 4 ads with icons above their heads, find a symbol which is different from the rest and kill that ad. If you get it wrong, it will deal a huge amount of damage to everyone. Now, the only difference on Mythic difficulty is that the boss will stay up during this phase, but you won't be able to attack her. And that's pretty much it for the second boss. The third and final boss is Tred'ova. At 70 and 40% health, the boss will gain a shield and begin channeling consumption, which deals moderate damage to all players. DPS the shield and interrupt the cast. While the shield is up, the boss will also be casting Anima Shedding, which are blue swirlies on the ground that you have to avoid. Throughout the fight, the boss will also be spawning 4 small ads. Some of these ads will fixate on a player and the rest needs to be picked up by the tank. The fixated ads needs to be killed while the fixated player runs away. When the ad dies, it will leave a green puddle on the ground that you have to avoid. 2 or more players will also be targeted by Mind Link. You can break the link by moving 40 yards away from each other. Now on Mythic difficulty, the bots will also be casting the green puddles on the ground, so just make sure to avoid those as well. A random player will also be targeted by one of the 3 parasitic abilities. Simply switch to that player who has it and DPS it down. And that's it for the final boss, so let's move on to some of the dungeon bonuses. So, if you happen to be with the Nightfade Covenant, you will have a few bonuses that you can use in this dungeon. The first one being right at the beginning. To the left side of the entrance you will see some overgrown roots that you can click and skip a few of the first trash mobs. The next bonus you can find right before the first boss. Behind the big wall you will see a bunch of different mushrooms that you can eat. If you eat the Savory Stat Shroom, it will instantly heal you for 100% of your health, increase your strength, agility and intellect by 10% for 10 minutes. However, if you eat the Tasty Shroom, it will increase your stamina by 10% for 10 minutes instead. And finally we have the last one. After each boss you'll be able to unlock new checkpoints by clicking on the depleted anima seeds to energize them, and this will unlock new checkpoints throughout the dungeon. So yeah guys, these were some of the Nightfade dungeon bonuses, but anyways, let's move on and check out some of the notable trash mobs as well. There is a few notable trash mobs in this dungeon. Right at the beginning you will see a pack of mobs including the villager mobs who will be casting an ability called Pollen, and you just have to step aside to avoid it. They will also be casting a spell called Overgrowth, reducing the speed by 50%, dealing nature damage, and stun the target for 6 seconds, so make sure to break the stun players out of it ASAP. The smaller adds called Soul Cleavers will be casting a spell on the tank called Soul Split, which can be dispelled, so make sure to do so. And the last ability called Harvest Essence is something you should make sure to interrupt as well. Within the maze, you will have 3 different type of adds that you have to watch out for. The defenders will be casting a frontal called Spear Flurry that you have to dodge. The tenders will be casting Nourish the Forest, which is a healing ability, so make sure to interrupt it. And the shapers will be casting Bramblethorn Coat, which is a shield that you can interrupt as well. Now after the second boss, there are a few trash mobs as well. The Spinemoor Staghorn will cast an ability called Stimulate Resistance, and this is a spell that you should interrupt. The adds will also be casting an Acid Spray, which you can avoid or stun to cancel the spell completely. So yeah, these were some of the notable trash mobs, so let's move on and summarize the bosses. Okay, so let's summarize all the bosses, starting with the first boss. Attack the big triad when you can and switch to Ingra Maloch when the big triad becomes friendly. Don't let your tank face the group and avoid the anima puddles on the ground. Also make sure to interrupt the boss to move him away from the puddles. On Mythic difficulty, make sure to position yourself correctly so you don't get feared into the puddles. On the second boss, avoid dodgeball, make sure your tank interrupts patty cake, and if you are targeted by the blue fox, don't get hit by it. And lastly, make sure you guess the correct symbols during the guessing game. On the final boss, make sure to DPS the shield and interrupt consumption. Avoid the blue and green swirlies on the ground, and if you are fixated by one of the 4 small adds, make sure to run away while everyone else nukes it down. Now if you get mind link with someone, run 40 yards away from each other to break it. On Mythic difficulty, make sure to switch and DPS the player who is targeted by one of the 3 parasitic abilities. And that's pretty much it for this dungeon, guys. If you enjoyed this quick and basic dungeon guide, make sure to subscribe to the channel as well, because I have a ton more coming very soon. Thank you for watching, I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to give it a like as well, it really makes a difference. Take care.